Stood in the pouring rain with nothing but a soaking wet suitcase and a shattered heart, ready to leave my cheating husband and this nightmare life behind forever. But before I could unlock my car door, a sleek black Rolls-Royce blocked my path in the driveway. The tinted window rolled down, revealing the face of a man I only knew from business magazines. It was Julian, the husband of the woman currently sleeping in my bed. He did not offer me a ride or a tissue for my tears. Instead, he threw a leather portfolio at my feet. Inside was a check for $50 million. "Don't divorce him yet," he said, his voice cold as ice. "Wait 5 months." That moment changed everything. But to understand why I shook hands with the devil, you have to see how I fell from grace just hours earlier in the middle of the most important night of my husband's life. Before I tell you how I destroyed them all, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you love seeing karma do its work. My name is Tasha, and I am 34 years old. To the outside world, I had it all. I was the wife of Marcus, the CEO of a booming medical technology company in Atlanta. We lived in a sprawling estate in Buckhead and drove cars that cost more than most people's houses. But the truth was, I felt like an imposter in my own life. I hold a doctorate in pharmacy and spent years working in clinical research, but tonight I was nothing more than a prop. This was the night of the pre-IPO fundraising gala, the night Marcus had been working toward for 5 years. The house was filled with potential investors, politicians, and the elite of Atlanta society. My job was simple: smile, look pretty, and do not speak unless spoken to. I smoothed the fabric of my emerald green gown and checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. "You can do this, Tasha," I whispered to myself. "Just get through tonight." Marcus had been on edge for weeks. Everything had to be perfect: the flowers, the music, the wine. He needed this capital to take the company public. If he succeeded, we would be billionaires. If he failed, he would blame me. He always blamed me. I walked into the grand ballroom, which was actually our living room, transformed with silk drapes and crystal chandeliers. Marcus was holding court near the piano, laughing loudly at a joke made by a venture capitalist. He looked handsome in his bespoke tuxedo, but his eyes were cold as they scanned the room, eventually landing on me. He gave a microscopic nod, a signal that I should circulate. I took a deep breath and stepped into the crowd. That was when I saw her. Sarah, my sister-in-law. She was married to Marcus's younger brother, Jamal, but she acted like she owned the place. Sarah was white and came from old money in Savannah, and she never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was new money, or as she liked to put it, just a pharmacist who got lucky. "Tasha, there you are," Sarah called out, her voice shrill enough to turn heads. "I see you wore the green dress. Brave choice. It really highlights your hips." I forced a smile. "Hello, Sarah. You look lovely tonight." She swirled her red wine in her glass, looking at me with that familiar mix of pity and disdain. "I try my best. Someone has to bring a little class to these events. Marcus is so stressed, poor thing. He needs someone who understands the pressure of high society. Not that you would know anything about that." I bit my tongue. I wanted to tell her that while she was spending her trust fund, I was graduating top of my class and managing pharmaceutical trials. But I knew better. Making a scene would only hurt Marcus. "I will go check on the appetizers," I said, turning to leave. As I turned, I felt a foot hook around my ankle. It was subtle but deliberate. I stumbled forward, my hands flailing to catch my balance. The tray of hors d'oeuvres I had just picked up went flying, but worse, my arm knocked into Sarah. Her glass of heavy red wine launched into the air and splashed all over the front of Marcus's pristine white tuxedo shirt, just as he walked up to us with the most important investor of the night. The room went dead silent. The red stain bloomed across Marcus's chest like a gunshot wound. He looked down at his shirt, then up at me. His face was a mask of pure fury. "Oh my God, Tasha!" Sarah shrieked, placing a hand over her mouth in mock horror. "Look what you did! You are so clumsy!" "I did not," I stammered, looking at Marcus. "I tripped. She—" "Enough." Marcus barked, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. Do you have any idea who I am talking to right now? Do you have any idea how much this night means? I am sorry, Marcus. It was an accident, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes, as the guests whispered behind their hands. An accident, he sneered, leaning close so only I could hear. You are the accident, Tasha. You are an embarrassment. Look at you. You do not belong here. You never have. Why can't you just be competent for one single night? Sarah stepped forward, dabbing at Marcus's jacket with a napkin, her eyes gleaming with triumph. It is okay, Marcus. Tasha just isn't cut out for this world. Maybe she should go back to the kitchen or go mix some medicines. She is clearly overwhelmed. Get out of my sight, Marcus hissed at me, pushing me away. Go upstairs. Stay there. Do not come back down until everyone is gone. I will have to clean this up myself. I turned and fled the room, my cheeks burning with humiliation. I could hear Sarah's laughter following me up the grand staircase. I held my head high until I turned the corner, but inside I was crumbling. I had supported Marcus when he was a nobody. I had paid our rent with my pharmacist's salary while he coded his first app in our basement. I had reviewed his medical data for accuracy because he didn't know the difference between a peptide and a protein. And this was how he repaid me. I made it to the second-floor landing and leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. I needed to wash my face. I needed to calm down. I headed toward the master bedroom, but as I passed the library door, I heard a sound that stopped me cold. It was a giggle, a low, throaty giggle that I recognized instantly. It belonged to Chantel, a 24-year-old Instagram model Marcus had hired as a brand ambassador 3 months ago. She was young, gorgeous, and had been looking at my husband with hungry eyes since the day they met. I froze. The library door was cracked open just an inch. I knew I should keep walking. I knew I should go to my room and lock the door and pretend I didn't hear anything. But my feet wouldn't move. Oh, Marcus, stop it! Chantel's voice drifted through the crack. Someone might hear us. Tasha is just upstairs. Let her hear, Marcus's voice replied. It sounded different than when he spoke to me. It was lighter, younger. She is probably crying in her pillow right now. Useless woman. Did you see her downstairs? She nearly ruined the deal with the investors. She is just pathetic, Chantel cooed. I don't know how you stand her. Why don't you just leave her already? I held my breath, leaning closer to the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I can't yet, Marcus said, and I heard the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Not until the IPO. The investors like the image of a stable family man. Tasha is boring, but she has a clean record. She is a doctor, for God's sake. It makes me look legitimate. If I divorce her now, it gets messy. The stock price could tank before we even launch. So I have to wait. Chantel whined. Just 5 months, baby, Marcus said soothingly. Just 5 months. Once the company goes public and the lockup period ends, I will cash out. I will have hundreds of millions. Then I will kick that pharmacist back to the gutter where I found her. She won't get a dime. I have been hiding assets in offshore accounts she doesn't even know about. I covered my mouth with my hand to stifle a sob. Hiding assets. Waiting to discard me. It wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plot to destroy me. And what about us? Chantel asked. We will have everything Marcus promised. We will travel the world. And our son will have the best of everything. Our son. The words hit me harder than the wine glass incident. I pressed my eye to the crack in the door. Through the sliver of light, I saw them. Marcus was sitting in his leather armchair, his shirt unbuttoned, showing the red wine stain on his undershirt. Chantel was straddling his lap, her arms around his neck. But it was what Marcus was doing that made my knees buckle. His hand was resting possessively on Chantel's stomach. He is going to be a king, Marcus whispered, kissing her neck. My heir. I stumbled back from the door, my head spinning. We had tried for years to have children. We had gone to specialists. Marcus had told me it was stress, that we just needed to be patient. He had never told me he was unhappy. He had never told me he wanted out. He had just used me. He was using my credentials, my stability, and my loyalty to build his empire, while planning to replace me with a younger model the moment the check cleared. A floorboard creaked under my foot. Inside the library, the movement stopped instantly. "Did you hear that?" Chantel whispered. Marcus stood up abruptly, pushing Chantel aside. He strode toward the door. I tried to run, but I was in heels, and the hallway was long. Before I could take 3 steps, the library door swung open. Marcus stood there disheveled and angry. When he saw me, his expression didn't change to guilt or shame. It hardened into something cruel. "Well, well," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I guess the little mouse has big ears." "You are disgusting!" I spat out, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I possessed. "I heard everything, Marcus. The IPO, the hidden assets, the baby." He laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Good. It saves me the trouble of pretending to like your cooking for the next few months." "How could you?" I screamed. "I supported you. I built this life with you." "You were a stepping stone," Tasha Marcus said, walking toward me until he was looming over me. "You were useful when I needed a respectable wife with a degree. Now you are just dead weight. Look at you. You have no style, no charisma. You are boring, Tasha. Chantel has fire. She understands what it takes to be at the top." "I am leaving," I said, turning away. "I am filing for divorce in the morning. And I am taking half of everything. I will tell the investors. I will tell everyone." Marcus grabbed my arm, spinning me around. His face was inches from mine, and his eyes were terrifying. "You will do no such thing," he growled. "You think you have power here? You have nothing. If you walk out that door tonight, if you try to blow up my IPO, I will destroy you. I have lawyers who eat pharmacists for breakfast. I will bury you in legal fees until you are living in a cardboard box. I will make sure you lose your license. I will claim you are mentally unstable. Who do you think they will believe? The successful CEO about to make them rich, or the jealous barren wife, barren?" He used our infertility against me. The pain was blinding. "Let go of me," I whispered. He shoved me back. "Go ahead. Pack a bag. Sleep in the guest room. But tomorrow morning, you are going to put on your happy wife face, and you are going to smile for the cameras. We have 5 months, Tasha. You are going to play your part, or I swear to God, I will leave you with absolutely nothing." I stared at him, at the man I had loved for 10 years, the man I had sacrificed everything for. And I saw him clearly for the first time. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a monster. I ran across the patio, slipping on the wet stone. I scrambled up and kept running. I ran across the manicured lawn, my feet sinking into the mud, ruining the grass Marcus paid thousands of dollars a month to maintain. I reached the long, winding driveway and kept going. The rain soaked through my dress, instantly plastering the fabric to my skin. My hair hung in heavy, wet curtains, blinding me. I was shivering violently, my teeth chattering, but I could not stop. I had to get to the main road. I had to get away. I would walk to the gas station 3 miles away. I would beg a stranger for a phone call. I would call a friend. I would call anyone. I heard the sound of the front door opening behind me. I heard Marcus's voice shouting my name over the roar of the thunder. "Tasha, get back here, you are embarrassing me." I did not look back. I ran harder, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. The darkness wrapped around me, and the rain washed away the scent of the house, the scent of the perfume, the scent of the betrayal. I reached the iron gates at the end of the driveway. I squeezed through the pedestrian gap and stumbled onto the public road. It was dark and deserted. The streetlights were blurred by the downpour. I was alone. I had nothing. No money, no ID, no car, no husband, no home. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold my shattering pieces together. I walked blindly down the road, the headlights of a passing car illuminating my misery for a split second before leaving me in the dark again. I was a doctor of pharmacy. I was a brilliant woman. I was a loyal wife. And now I was a wet, shivering refugee walking on the side of the road in the middle of the night. The despair was so heavy, it almost crushed me into the asphalt. I thought about stopping. I thought about sitting down in the mud and just letting the rain take me. What was the point of fighting? He had won. He had everything. But as I put one foot in front of the other, a tiny spark ignited in the center of my chest. It was not hope. It was something hotter. It was hate. I hated him. I hated her. I hated their smug faces and their cruel words. I hated that they thought they could discard me like trash. I would survive this. I did not know how, but I would survive this, and I would make them pay. Headlights appeared in the distance behind me, slowing down as they approached. I tensed, ready to jump into the ditch if it was Marcus coming to drag me back. The car slowed to a crawl beside me. It was not Marcus's sports car. It was a massive, sleek vehicle, blacker than the night itself. A Rolls-Royce. The window rolled down. And that was when the next chapter of my life began. Not with a rescue, but with a business transaction that would change the world. The window of the massive black vehicle slid down with a silent mechanical hum, revealing a man whose face was illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard lights. He was older than Marcus, probably in his mid-50s, with dark skin that looked like polished mahogany and eyes that were cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of pity. He wore a tuxedo that cost more than my entire year's salary as a pharmacist, and on his wrist sat a gold watch that ticked away seconds that felt like hours. He looked at me standing there in the mud and rain, my hair plastered to my skull. My dress ruined, my dignity, shredded, and he did not offer a smile. He did not ask if I was okay. He simply unlocked the doors with a sharp click. "Get in," he said. His voice was deep and commanding, the kind of voice that expected obedience. It was not a request. I hesitated. I was a woman alone on a dark road, and this was a stranger. But then I looked back up the driveway toward the house where my husband was currently celebrating his future with his pregnant mistress. I looked down at my bare feet sinking into the cold mud. I had nothing left to lose. If this man wanted to kill me, he would be doing me a favor. I pulled open the heavy door and slid onto the pristine cream leather interior of the Rolls-Royce. The warmth hit me instantly, wrapping around my shivering body. The car smelled of expensive cologne and old money. I sat there dripping wet, ruining the leather, hugging my arms to my chest, trying to stop my teeth from chattering. The man pressed a button and the partition between us and the driver slid up, sealing us in a private soundproof capsule. He turned to me, and for the first time I saw the simmering rage beneath his composed exterior. It was a controlled burn, a fire kept behind thick glass. "You must be Tasha," he said. I nodded, water dripping from my nose. "Who are you?" "I am Julian," he replied. "And the woman currently drinking your champagne and sleeping in your bed is my wife, Chantel." The air left my lungs. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of a joke, but there was none. This was the man Chantel had betrayed. This was the man she was leaving for Marcus. "You know," I whispered. "I know everything," Julian said. He reached down to the floor by his feet and picked up a thick, heavy file folder. He did not hand it to me gently. He threw it. It landed in my lap with a heavy thud, sliding against my wet dress. "Open it." I opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were photos. High-resolution surveillance photos. Marcus and Chantel at dinner. Marcus and Chantel entering a hotel. Marcus and Chantel looking at ultrasound photos together. There were bank statements, too, showing transfers from a joint account I didn't know existed into an account under Chantel's name. "They have been planning this for 6 months," Julian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "They think they are clever. They think they are in love. They think I am a senile old fool who is too busy with his investments to notice that his trophy wife is spending $10,000 a month on lingerie she never wears for him." I closed the folder, feeling sick. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you look like you are about to run away," Julian said. I saw you walking down that road. You had the look of a woman who is going to call her mother, cry for a week, and then hire a divorce lawyer who charges $200 an hour to fight a man who has a team of sharks on retainer. I am leaving him, I said, trying to find a shred of strength. I have to. He is a monster. He is planning to dump me after the IPO. I know about the IPO, Julian cut me off. I know about his plan to discard you. And if you run away right now, you are giving him exactly what he wants. You make it easy for him. He will file for abandonment. He will paint you as the unstable, jealous wife who couldn't handle his success. He will get the sympathy vote. The investors will love the narrative of the heartbroken CEO rebuilding his life. He will win, Tasha. And you will be nothing but a footnote in his biography. Tears, hot and angry, pricked my eyes. So what am I supposed to do? Stay. Watch them be happy. No. Julian leaned closer, and the scent of his cologne was overpowering. You are going to help me destroy him. I looked at him confused. How? He has all the money. He has the lawyers. He has debt. Julian said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Marcus acts like a king, but he is living on a line of credit that I own. I blinked. You. I own the venture capital firm that fronted Marcus the bridge loan for this IPO, Julian explained. Through a series of shell companies, of course. He has no idea. He thinks he borrowed money from a faceless conglomerate in New York. He borrowed it from me. And that loan is massive, Tasha. It is leveraged against everything. His company, his future earnings, and his personal assets. I listened, trying to process the financial jargon through my shock. Here is the situation, Julian continued. For the IPO to go through, the underwriters need stability. They need to know that the CEO is not a liability. They need him to sign a personal guarantee locking in all his assets as collateral. But more importantly, they need his wife to sign it too. Me, I whispered. You? Julian nodded. In the state of Georgia, spousal consent is required for a lien of this magnitude on shared assets. He needs your signature on a document called the Spousal Consent and Guarantee Agreement. Without that signature, the underwriters will pull the plug. The IPO fails, the bridge loan comes due immediately, and since he spent that money on marketing and lavish parties, he won't be able to pay it back. He will be insolvent within 48 hours. So I just refuse to sign, I said, feeling a surge of hope. I leave. I don't sign. And he fails. Julian shook his head slowly. If you leave now and refuse to sign, he will claim you are uncooperative. He will forge your signature, or he will find a loophole. He is slippery. Or worse, he will find a new investor, a shark who doesn't care about his wife. I don't want him to just fail, Tasha. Failing is too easy. Men like Marcus bounce back from failure. They file bankruptcy, they reinvent themselves, they find a new victim. Julian's eyes darkened, and for a second, I saw the depth of his hatred. It was a bottomless pit. I want him obliterated, he hissed. I want him to lose his company. I want him to lose his reputation. I want him to lose his freedom. I want him to end up in a federal prison cell wondering where it all went wrong. And I want Chantel to watch it happen. I want her to realize she left a king for a pauper. I want to watch the light go out in her eyes when she realizes she is pregnant by a man who can't even afford diapers. I shivered. This man was dangerous. But he was dangerous to the people who had hurt me. So what is the plan? I asked, my voice steadying. Julian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim envelope. You go back inside, he said. You dry your tears. You apologize. You tell him you had a panic attack. You tell him you are sorry, you are insecure. You tell him you will be the good wife. You play the role, Tasha. You play it so well that he believes he has broken you. And then in 2 weeks he will bring you the papers to sign, Julian said. He will try to rush you. He will tell you it is just a formality, and you will sign them, but not the papers he gives you. Julian tapped the envelope in his hand. Inside this envelope is a single page. It looks exactly like the signature page of the standard guarantee agreement. Same font, same margins, Same legal jargon at the top. But my lawyers have added a paragraph in fine print at the bottom. A cross-default clause linked to a morality rider. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Julian said, smiling that terrifying smile again, that the entire loan, the hundreds of millions of dollars, becomes immediately due and payable in full if the borrower Marcus is found to have engaged in extramarital affairs or fathered a child out of wedlock during the term of the loan. It also stipulates that in the event of such a default, ownership of his controlling shares in the company reverts to the guarantor. To me. To you, Julian confirmed. You sign this page. You swap it with the page he gives you. He signs it thinking he is securing his fortune. Instead, he is signing his death warrant. We wait 5 months until the IPO launch day. We let the stock price soar. We let him think he has won. And then right when he is standing on that stage ready to ring the bell, we drop the evidence. We trigger the clause. I stared at him. It was diabolical. It was perfect. But it required me to live with him, to sleep in the house where he was betraying me, to watch Chantel parade around with her growing belly. I can't, I said, my resolve crumbling. 5 months, Julian. 5 months of pretending. 5 months of letting him abuse me emotionally. I can't do it. I don't have the money to survive if I leave later. He took my keys. He took my cards. Julian reached into the briefcase next to him and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote quickly, his gold pen scratching against the paper. He tore off the check and held it out to me. I looked at it. $50 million. This is a retainer, Julian said. It is drawn from an offshore trust. It is already in your name. Nobody knows about it. Not Marcus, not the IRS. Just you and me. $50 million, I breathed. Take it, Julian said, pushing it into my hand. This is your freedom, Tasha. This is your power. With this money you can disappear. You can buy an island. You can start your own pharmaceutical company. You can do whatever you want. But you have to earn it. You have to endure 5 months of hell to get to heaven. I looked at the check. It was more money than I could ever spend. It was enough to buy safety. It was enough to buy revenge. Why are you doing this? I asked, looking up at him. You could just ruin him yourself. No, Julian said, his voice soft and deadly. It has to be you. He underestimates you, Tasha. He thinks you are weak. He thinks you are stupid. He thinks you are a doormat. Men like Marcus never see the knife coming when it is held by the woman they think they own. I want the last thing he sees before he loses everything to be your face. I looked out the window. The rain was still falling, washing away the dirt of the driveway. Upstairs, Marcus was probably pouring another drink, laughing at how easily he had scared me off. He thought he had won. He thought I was gone. I thought about the last 10 years. The late nights I spent studying his contracts because he was too lazy to read them. The way I smoothed over his insults to his staff. The way I held him when he cried because his father didn't love him. I had given him everything, and he wanted to leave me with nothing. I looked at the check again. $50 million. It wasn't just money, it was a weapon. I folded the check and slipped it inside the wet bodice of my dress. I took the envelope with the swapped legal page. I wiped the rain from my face with the back of my hand. I straightened my spine. One condition, I said. Name it, Julian replied. I want protection, I said. If he hits me, if he tries to hurt me physically. Julian nodded. You will have it. I have a security team. They will be watching the house 24/7. I will have eyes and ears in every room. I will give you a phone that is encrypted. If you feel unsafe, you press one button, and my men will be through the front door in 3 minutes. I took a deep breath. The air in the car was warm, but my blood ran cold. I was done being the victim. I was done being the pharmacist wife. I reached for the door handle. I will do it, I said. Julian nodded once, a sharp, precise movement. Good. Now get out of my car. And Tasha, make it convincing. I stepped back out into the rain. The Rolls-Royce pulled away its taillights, disappearing into the darkness like the eyes of a predator. I stood alone in the driveway, soaking wet, clutching the envelope that would end my husband's life as he knew it. I turned toward the house. The lights were blazing. The party was still going. I walked up the steps. I opened the front door. Marcus was standing in the foyer saying goodbye to the last of the guests. Sarah was there too, laughing at something he said. When the door opened, they both turned. Silence fell over the room. I stood there dripping water onto the marble floor, my hair a mess, my makeup running down my face. I looked pathetic. I looked broken. Tasha. Sarah gasped. Oh my God, look at you. You look like a drowned rat. Marcus stared at me, his eyes narrowing. You came back. I forced my lip to tremble. I lowered my eyes. I hunched my shoulders, making myself look smaller. I had nowhere to go. I whispered, my voice cracking perfectly. Please, Marcus. I am sorry. I panicked. Please don't lock me out. Sarah snorted, covering her mouth. Oh, this is rich. Marcus walked over to me. He looked at my wet dress, my shivering form. A look of supreme satisfaction crossed his face. He had won. He had broken me. He owned me. He reached out and brushed a wet strand of hair from my cheek. I told you, Tasha, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. You are nothing without me. I looked up at him through my lashes. I let a single tear roll down my cheek. I know I lied. Good, Marcus said. Go upstairs. Get cleaned up. You are ruining the floor. I walked past him, past Sarah, past the judging eyes of the remaining staff. I walked up the stairs, my head bowed in defeat. But inside, my heart was beating a new rhythm. 5 months, Marcus. 5 months. And then, I am going to take it all. The elevator ride to the 45th floor of the Sterling and Vance law firm was silent, except for the sound of Marcus tapping his foot against the marble floor. He checked his reflection in the mirrored walls, straightening his tie and running a hand over his fresh haircut. He looked like a king ascending to his throne. I stood in the corner, clutching my handbag to my chest, trying to make myself look small. I wore a beige cardigan that was 2 sizes too big and no makeup. I looked like the terrified wife he needed me to be. We stepped out into a lobby that screamed intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlanta skyline. The furniture was modern and uncomfortable. A receptionist who looked like a runway model led us into the main conference room where Mr. Sterling was waiting. Sterling was a man in his 60s who smelled of cigars and expensive scotch. He was Marcus's personal shark, the kind of lawyer who made problems disappear for a price. He stood up and shook Marcus's hand vigorously, completely ignoring me, until Marcus gestured vaguely in my direction. And this is Tasha. Marcus said, his tone bored. Sterling gave me a thin smile that did not reach his eyes. Ah, yes, the pharmacist. Please sit down, Mrs. Brooks. We have a lot of paperwork to get through, and Marcus tells me we are on a tight schedule. I sat in the leather chair that felt too big for me. In the center of the mahogany table sat a stack of documents 3 inches thick. They were bound with heavy clips and flagged with yellow stickers indicating where I needed to sign. Marcus sat next to me, but he angled his chair away from me toward Sterling. They exchanged a look, a silent communication between men who believed they ran the world. All right, Tasha, Marcus said, turning to me. Here's the situation. The bridge loan for the IPO needs more collateral. The investors want to see skin in the game. They want to know we are fully committed. I nodded, keeping my eyes wide and fearful. Okay, Marcus, what do I need to do? You need to sign over the deed to the house, Marcus said casually, as if he were asking me to pass the salt. My heart stopped. Not the Buckhead estate. He was talking about the brownstone in Sweet Auburn. The house my grandparents had bought in the 50s. The house my parents had left to me. It was the only thing I owned that Marcus didn't have his name on. It was my legacy. It was the home where I had learned to walk, where I had studied for my pharmacy boards. Your parents' house? I whispered, my voice trembling for real this time. But Marcus? That is my inheritance. You promised we would never touch that. Marcus rolled his eyes. Oh, grow up, Tasha. It is just a dusty old building in a neighborhood that hasn't gentrified fast enough. It is dead equity. We need liquidity. But what if something goes wrong? I asked, my voice rising in panic. If the company fails, I lose my parents' home. The company is not going to fail, Marcus snapped, slamming his hand on the table. God, why do you always have to be so negative? This is $100 million IPO, Tasha. Your little house is worth what? 600,000. It is a drop in the bucket. But the bank requires all personal assets to be pledged. It is a formality. Sterling leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Mrs. Brooks, this is standard procedure for high-level corporate financing. By refusing to sign, you are essentially telling the market that you do not believe in your husband's vision. Is that the message you want to send? They were gang-tackling me, gaslighting me, making me feel like a traitor for wanting to protect the one thing that was truly mine. I looked at Marcus. He was glaring at me, his jaw tight. Sign the papers, Tasha, he hissed. Do not embarrass me. I looked down at my hands. I thought about the envelope hidden in my purse. The envelope Julian had given me. The one with the swapped signature page. I had spent 3 nights memorizing the layout of the document Marcus was presenting. Julian's lawyers had obtained a draft through their back channels. They had recreated the font, the spacing, the paperweight perfectly. The only difference was paragraph 14. In Marcus's version, paragraph 14 was a standard indemnity clause. In my version, paragraph 14 was a transfer of ownership upon moral turpitude clause. It stated that if the primary borrower was found to have violated the sanctity of the marriage contract through infidelity or the production of illegitimate offspring, the ownership of the pledged collateral and the controlling shares of the company would transfer immediately to the guarantor. Me. I needed to swap the pages, and I needed to do it right under the noses of 2 of the most arrogant men in Atlanta. I reached for my purse. I let my hands shake violently. I need a tissue, I sniffled. I think I am going to have a panic attack. Marcus groaned. Jesus, Tasha, not now. I fumbled with the clasp of my bag. I yanked it too hard. The contents of my purse spilled out onto the polished mahogany table and scattered onto the floor. Lipstick, keys, tampons, a bottle of anxiety medication, and the envelope. I gasped, dropping to my knees to gather my things. I am so sorry. I am so clumsy. I am sorry. Marcus sighed loudly and turned away, rubbing his temples in frustration. Sterling looked at me with open contempt, not moving a muscle to help. Perfect. Under the table, shielded by the heavy leather chairs and the distraction of my own mess, I grabbed the envelope. I tore it open silently. I pulled out the single sheet of paper. I reached up and grabbed the stack of legal documents from the table, pulling them onto my lap as if I were trying to organize my spilled belongings. What are you doing down there? Tasha Marcus barked. Get up. I am just getting the papers, I squeaked. I dropped them. With a sleight of hand that would have made a magician proud, I slid the original signature page out from the bottom of the stack and slid my page in. I crumbled the original page into a ball and shoved it deep into my purse along with my lipstick. I stood up, my face flushed, my hair messy, clutching the stack of documents. I placed them back on the table. I am ready, I said, wiping my nose with a tissue. I will sign. Marcus looked at me, his eyes cold. Finally. Sterling pushed a heavy fountain pen toward me. Sign where the yellow stickers are, Mrs. Brooks. And initial the bottom of each page. I froze. Initial every page. My page had initials on the bottom right corner, but if I initialed the other pages, they would see my hand shaking. They might look closer. I took the pen. I signed the first page. My signature was a jagged scrawl. I turned the page. I signed the second. I reached the last page, the page I had swapped. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack a bone. If they looked at the text, if they read just one sentence of paragraph 14, I was dead. Marcus would kill me. I looked at the page. It looked identical to the others. Julian's team was good. I put the pen to the paper. Wait, Sterling said. My hand froze. The ink bled a small black dot onto the white paper. Marcus looked at Sterling. What is it? Sterling squinted at the document upside down. You missed an initial on page 4. I let out a breath that was almost a sob. Oh, I am sorry. I flipped back to page 4. I scribbled my initials. I flipped back to the last page. Just sign it, Marcus said, checking his watch. I have a lunch meeting with the underwriters in 20 minutes. I signed. Tasha Jenkins Brooks. I pushed the stack of papers toward Sterling. He did not read it. He did not check the clauses. He just flipped to the back, checked for the signature, and stamped it with a notary seal. He was so arrogant. He was so sure that I was just a stupid housewife that he didn't even conceive of the possibility that I could outsmart him. Done, Sterling said, closing the file. Congratulations, Marcus. The loan will be funded by close of business today. Marcus smiled. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. He did not help me up. He did not thank me. Let's go, Tasha, he said, walking toward the door. And try not to trip on your way out. I stood up, clutching my purse to my chest. I could feel the crumbled ball of the original page burning through the leather. I followed them out of the office. I walked behind them, listening to them laugh and joke about the millions they were going to make. They talked about buying a yacht. They talked about a summer home in the Hamptons. They had no idea. I looked at the back of Marcus's head. I looked at the way he strutted. He thought he had just secured his empire. He had just signed it over to me. We rode the elevator down in silence. When the doors opened in the lobby, Marcus turned to me. Here is cab fare, he said, shoving a $20 bill into my hand. I am going to lunch. Don't wait up for me tonight. I have late meetings. I knew what those meetings were. He was going to Chantel. He was going to tell her that the house was secured, that the money was coming. He was going to laugh with her about how easy it was to manipulate me. I took the $20. Okay, Marcus, I said softly. Have a good meeting. He walked out the revolving doors and into the bright Atlanta sunshine. I stood in the lobby for a moment, watching him go. A strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't sadness. It was power. I walked out of the building and hailed a cab. But I did not go home. I gave the driver an address in Midtown. Where are we going, miss? The driver asked. The bank. I said, I have a safety deposit box I need to open. I needed to store the original page. I needed to keep it safe. It was my insurance policy. It was the proof that I had switched them. As the cab merged into traffic, I pulled out the burner phone Julian had given me. I typed a message. The Eagle has landed. Papers are signed. He didn't read them. I hit send. A moment later, the reply came. Well done, partner. Now the clock starts. 5 months. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. 5 months. I could do 5 months. I would cook his meals. I would wash his clothes. I would smile at his parties. I would be the perfect wife. And every time he looked at me with that smug, condescending expression, I would think about paragraph 14. I would think about the look on his face when he realized that the house, the company, the millions, everything he loved belonged to the woman he hated. The cab driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. You look happy about something, miss, he said. Did you win the lottery? I opened my eyes and looked at the passing city. Something like that, I said. Something better than the lottery. I won my life back. But the war wasn't over. It was just beginning, and the next battle was going to be fought on the home front. I had to deal with Sarah. My sister-in-law had been a thorn in my side since the day I met her. She was the queen bee of the Buckhead charity circuit, and she had made it her mission to make sure I never forgot that I didn't belong. She was hosting a tea party next week, a high society event for the wives of the investors. Marcus had ordered me to go. Make nice with Sarah, he had said. She can help you look less like a charity case. I smiled. Oh, I was going to make nice with Sarah, all right. I was going to make nice with her business. I tapped a new message to Julian. I need a favor. Find out who owns the building Sarah's boutique is in, and buy it. The reply was instantaneous. Consider it done. I put the phone away. Game on, Sarah. Game on. The air in Sarah's boutique smelled of lavender, expensive perfume, and the distinct metallic tang of judgment. This was her kingdom. A high-end spa and fashion boutique in the heart of Buckhead, where the wives of Atlanta's elite came to spend their husbands' money and whisper about who was sleeping with whom. I stood near the entrance, clutching my purse, feeling like an intruder in a world I was technically paying for. Sarah had insisted I come. She called it a peace offering, a tea party to welcome me back into the fold after my little episode in the rain. But I knew better. This was not an olive branch. It was a public execution. She wanted to remind me of my place. She wanted to parade me in front of her friends like a captured animal. I smoothed the fabric of my dress. It was a simple navy sheath off the rack from a department store. I had left my designer clothes at home. I needed to look the part of the chastened wife, the woman who had lost her shine. Sarah spotted me from across the room. She was holding court on a velvet sofa surrounded by three women who looked like clones of each other. Blonde highlights, Botoxed foreheads, and diamonds that caught the light with every gesture. Tasha Sarah called out, her voice pitching high enough to shatter glass. "You made it! We were just taking bets on whether you would show up or if you were too busy cleaning the house." The women laughed. A cruel tinkling sound. I forced a smile and walked toward them. My heels sank into the plush white carpet. "Hello, Sarah," I said softly. "Thank you for inviting me." Sarah patted the empty spot on the sofa next to her. "Sit down. Don't be shy. Although be careful with that drink. This sofa cost more than your car." I sat down, keeping my knees together and my hands folded in my lap. I looked around the shop. It was filled with overpriced candles, silk scarves, and racks of clothing that looked like they were made for teenagers, but priced for heiresses. "So Tasha," Sarah said, turning to her friends. "We were just talking about fashion. I was telling the girls how much I admire your commitment to frugality. It takes a lot of confidence to wear last season's polyester to a Buckhead event." One of the women, a brunette with lips that looked painful, smirked. "It is brave, really. I wish I cared that little about my appearance." I took a sip of my tea. It was lukewarm and bitter. "I like to be comfortable," I murmured, playing my role. "Comfort is for people who cannot afford style," Sarah said. "Speaking of style, look what Marcus gave me yesterday." She reached behind a cushion and pulled out a handbag. It was not just a bag. It was a Birkin. A Himalayan crocodile Birkin with diamond hardware. It sat on her lap like a small white deity. The women gasped. "Oh my God," Sarah, one of them, squealed. "That is the Holy Grail. How did you get one?" "Marcus has connections," Sarah said, preening. "He knows how much I have done for him lately, helping him manage the family image, keeping certain problems under control. He wanted to show his appreciation." I stared at the bag. I knew exactly how much that bag cost. It was upwards of $200,000, and I knew exactly where the money had come from. 2 days ago, I had seen a withdrawal notification from one of the offshore accounts Marcus thought he had hidden. He had drained the emergency liquidity fund for the company. He was stealing from his own investors, stealing from the future of the company, to buy his sister-in-law's silence. He bought her a bag to keep her mouth shut about Chantel. "It is beautiful, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "Marcus is very generous." Sarah ran her hand over the textured leather. "He is. He knows quality when he sees it. Unlike some people in this family, he appreciates class." She looked at me, her eyes cold and hard. "You know, Tasha?" she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I honestly do not know why you stay. Marcus is clearly miserable. He needs a woman who can stand beside him, not one who drags him down. Look at you. You are blending into the beige walls. If I were you, I would have taken the hint years ago." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Not from embarrassment, but from anger. This woman who had never worked a day in her life, who was living off her husband and my husband, was lecturing me on worth. But I pushed the anger down. I channeled it into the phone hidden in my purse. I checked the time. 2:30 p.m. Julian had sent me a text 10 minutes ago. The paperwork is filed. The courier is en route. I looked at Sarah. She was so smug, so secure in her little kingdom. She thought she was untouchable. She thought her brother-in-law's money would protect her forever. She had no idea that the building we were sitting in, the building she had leased for 5 years and turned into her personal palace, had been sold yesterday to a shell company owned by a trust. My trust. I am just trying to be a good wife, Sarah, I said, lowering my eyes. I love Marcus. Sarah rolled her eyes. Love, please. It is pathetic. You are holding on by a thread, Tasha, and everyone knows it. Even the staff knows it. The front door of the boutique opened. The chime sounded loud in the quiet room. A man walked in. He was wearing a uniform, but not a delivery uniform. It was a process server. He held a large manila envelope. Sarah frowned. We are closed for a private event. You need to leave. Are you Sarah Brooks? The man asked, ignoring her tone. I am. Who are you? I have a delivery for you, ma'am. He walked over and held out the envelope. Sarah hesitated, then snatched it from his hand. Probably another gift from Marcus, she said to her friends with a laugh. Maybe he bought me the matching wallet. She tore open the envelope. She pulled out the papers. I watched her face. I watched the smile slide off her lips like oil. I watched her skin turn a pasty shade of gray. What is this? She whispered. She read further. Her hands started to shake. This cannot be right. This is a mistake. What is it? Sarah the brunette asked, leaning in. Sarah stood up, knocking her tea onto the white carpet. The brown stains spread quickly, ruining the pristine surface. It says I am being evicted. Evicted, one of the women gasped. But you own the lease. It says the building has been sold. Sarah stammered, her eyes scanning the legal jargon. It says the new owner is exercising the immediate termination clause due to structural violations and unauthorized renovations. Unauthorized renovations? I asked innocently. Did you not get permits for the spa expansion, Sarah? Sarah spun on me. Shut up, Tasha. Of course I got permits. Marcus handled it. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers were trembling so badly she could barely unlock the screen. I am calling Marcus. He will fix this. He knows the owner. She dialed. She put it on speakerphone so we could all hear Marcus save the day. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Answer, Marcus, pick up, she hissed. Finally the call connected. Marcus's voice filled the room. He sounded stressed, breathless. Sarah, I cannot talk right now. I am in a meeting with the underwriters. Marcus. Sarah shrieked. You have to help me. Some man just served me papers. They are kicking me out. They say the building was sold. They say I have to vacate in 48 hours. What? Marcus snapped. That is impossible. The lease is solid. They are saying the renovations were illegal, Sarah cried. They are saying the spa is a fire hazard. Marcus. They are shutting me down. You have to buy the building. You have to fix this. I cannot buy the building, Sarah, Marcus shouted. I do not have the liquidity right now. Every dime is tied up in the IPO. But you promised. Sarah yelled, forgetting her audience, forgetting the facade. You promised you would take care of me if I kept my mouth shut about the baby. You bought me a bag, Marcus. I need the building. The room went deadly silent. The three friends stared at Sarah, their mouths agape. Baby. Kept her mouth shut. Marcus's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Sarah, shut your mouth. Are you on speaker? No. Sarah lied, her eyes wide with panic. No, I am alone. You are lying, Marcus hissed. Listen to me. Handle it yourself. Call the landlord. Bribe them. I do not care. Do not call me again until the IPO is done. Click. The line went dead. Sarah stood there holding the phone, the dial tone buzzing in the silence. The Birkin bag sat on the sofa, a $200,000 bribe that was now worthless. She looked at her friends. She looked at me. She crumbled. She sank back onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "I am ruined," she sobbed. "I put everything into this place. If they close me down, I am bankrupt." Her friends exchanged glances. They were sharks smelling blood. They stood up, gathering their purses. "Sarah, honey, we should go," the brunette said. "You obviously have some family matters to deal with. Call us when this is sorted out," another said. They filed out, leaving Sarah alone in the wreckage of her tea party. I stayed. I took another sip of my tea. Sarah looked up at me, mascara running down her face. "Why are you still here?" she spat. "Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy seeing me humiliated?" I set my teacup down on the saucer with a gentle clink. "Actually, Sarah, I did." She stared at me. "What?" I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I leaned in close so she could hear every word. "You spent years treating me like dirt. You mocked my clothes, my job, my life. You helped your brother-in-law hide his mistress. You took his hush money while I was trying to save our marriage." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You knew." "I know everything, Sarah, and I think you should know something too." I picked up my purse and slung it over my shoulder. "I know the new owner of this building." Sarah gasped. "Who? Who is it? Tell me. I will beg them. I will do anything." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "You can't beg them, Sarah. Because they don't want your money. They want you gone." I turned and walked toward the door. "And Sarah," I called back over my shoulder, "you have 48 hours. I would start packing. That Birkin bag should hold a lot of your things." I walked out into the bright Atlanta sunshine. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the bank. The transaction was complete. The deed was recorded. I owned the building. I owned her sanctuary. I walked to the curb and hailed a cab. I did not look back. But the war wasn't over. Sarah was just a pawn. The king and queen were still standing. I checked my phone again. A text from Julian. "Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 begins tonight. Chantel is demanding a baby shower." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. A baby shower. Perfect. I knew exactly what gift to bring. I typed a reply. "Let her have it. I will handle the entertainment." I put the phone away. Sarah was down. Marcus was distracted. Chantel was getting comfortable. They thought the storm had passed. They didn't know I was the hurricane. The atmosphere in my own home had shifted from a cold war to a suffocating occupation. It had been 3 months since the night in the rain, 3 months of playing the role of the submissive, defeated wife. Chantel wasn't just staying in the guest room anymore, she had taken over the entire house. Her pregnancy hormones, or perhaps just her natural personality, had turned her into a tyrant. She complained about the temperature, she complained about the lighting, and she complained incessantly about my cooking. Mama Pearl acted as her enforcer, waddling behind her to ensure her every whim was met, treating me like a servant in the home I paid for. I was in the kitchen scrubbing pots from lunch because the dishwasher was too loud for Chantel's afternoon nap when I heard the click of heels on the tile. Chantel waddled in one hand on her back, the other rubbing her stomach, which was now showing a distinct bump. She was wearing a silk slip dress that cost more than my first car. "Tasha," she said, her voice dripping with that faux sweetness that made my teeth ache, "I have a favor to ask. Although it is really more of a requirement since you are the only one here who isn't carrying the heir to the Brooks dynasty." I didn't look up from the sink. "What do you need, Chantel?" She dropped a wicker laundry basket onto the counter with a thud. "I need these washed. And do not put them in the machine. They are hand wash only. Imported silk. Marcus bought them for me in Milan before before you ruined the vibe." I turned off the water and dried my hands on a towel. I looked into the basket. It was filled with lingerie. Not just any lingerie, but La Perla. Delicate lace, intricate embroidery, whisper thin silk in shades of crimson, midnight blue and black. It was the kind of intimate wear a husband buys a wife he desires. Marcus had never bought me anything like this. He bought me appliances. He bought me practical gifts. Seeing this pile of expensive lace was a physical blow. "You want me to wash your underwear?" I asked, my voice flat. Chantel smirked, leaning against the counter. "Not just wash them, Tasha. Care for them. Use the special detergent under the sink, cold water only, and lay them flat to dry. I need them for tonight." Marcus said he wants a private fashion show to help him relax. He has been so stressed about Sarah's shop closing down. Poor Sarah. I don't know who would be cruel enough to evict her like that. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. She had no idea. "I am busy." "Chantel," I said, "I have to prep dinner for Mama Pearl." Mama Pearl walked in right on cue, attracted by the sound of conflict, like a shark to blood. "What is the problem now, Tasha?" she demanded, glaring at me. "Why are you upsetting the mother of my grandchild? She wants me to hand wash her lingerie," I said, gesturing to the basket. "So wash it," Mama Pearl snapped. "What else do you have to do? You don't have a job anymore since you took that leave of absence. You are living here for free, eating our food, using our electricity. The least you can do is help out." Poor Chantel's back hurts. She can't be bending over a sink. I looked at the two of them, the mistress and the mother-in-law, united in their disdain. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was their doormat. "Fine," I said, picking up the basket. "I will wash them." "Be careful," Chantel warned, her eyes narrowing. "That basket is worth $5,000. If you ruin a single thread, Marcus will hear about it." "Don't worry," I said. "I will take care of them." I carried the basket into the laundry room, which was tucked away behind the kitchen. I set it down on the folding table. I could hear them laughing in the kitchen, probably making jokes about how the mighty doctor had fallen to a laundress. I turned on the sink, filling it with water. I looked at the shelf above the washer. There was the delicate fabric wash Chantel wanted me to use, and right next to it was a large white jug of industrial-strength bleach that the cleaning crew used for the tile floors. I stared at the jug. $5,000 worth of silk. I thought about the contract. I thought about the morality rider. I thought about the clause regarding physical abuse. Julian had been clear. We needed Marcus to break. We needed him to lose control. We needed an incident. A documented incident of physical aggression to trigger the immediate default clause without a waiting period. Marcus had been verbally abusive, sure, but he had been careful not to touch me. He knew the laws. He knew domestic violence complicated divorces. But Marcus was stressed. Sarah's eviction had rattled him. The IPO was weeks away and the pressure was mounting. He was a powder keg waiting for a match. And Chantel's lingerie was the match. I grabbed the bleach. I poured a generous amount into the basin, the chemical smell rising sharply in the air, mixing with the scent of lavender dryer sheets. I didn't stop there. I grabbed a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and added that too, just to be sure. I plunged the delicate red and black silk into the toxic bath. I watched the water turn pink as the dye bled out instantly. I watched the delicate lace disintegrate under the harsh chemicals. I used a wooden spoon to agitate the water, making sure every fiber was soaked, every thread destroyed. I left them soaking for 20 minutes while I went back to the kitchen to chop vegetables, humming a little tune. When I returned to the laundry room, the contents of the sink looked like a crime scene. The vibrant colors were gone, replaced by sickly pale pinks and grays. The silk was dissolving, turning into a pulpy mess. I drained the sink. I wrung out the ruined garments, roughly tearing the lace further. I tossed the wet, shapeless globs back into the wicker basket. I walked out to the living room where Chantel was painting her nails on the coffee table while Mama Pearl watched TV. "All done," I said, setting the basket down in front of her. Chantel didn't look up immediately. "Thanks. Just leave them there. I will hang them up later." "You might want to check them," I said innocently. "I think the water might have been a little too hot." Chantel frowned. She reached into the basket. She pulled out what used to be a crimson teddy. It was now a pale, splotchy pink rag with holes eaten through the fabric. She stared at it. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She pulled out another piece. A black bra that was now gray and falling apart, the underwire poking out like a broken rib. She screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It was a banshee wail that shook the windows. My clothes, she shrieked, dropping the wet rags onto the expensive rug. My La Perla, you ruined them. You ruined everything. Mama Pearl jumped up from her chair. Lord have mercy, what happened? She bleached them. Chantel screamed, her face turning red. She did it on purpose. Look at this. It smells like a swimming pool. I stood there, my hands clasped in front of me, my face a mask of confusion. I am so sorry, I said. I thought bleach made things clean. I just wanted to make sure they were sanitized. You know germs. You stupid cow, Chantel yelled, throwing the wet ball of silk at me. It hit me in the chest, soaking my shirt with bleach water. You are jealous. You are a jealous, bitter old hag. You destroyed these because you know Marcus will never look at you the way he looks at me. The front door slammed open. Marcus strode in, his briefcase in hand. He looked exhausted. His tie loosened, his eyes dark with stress. What the hell is going on? He roared. I can hear you screaming from the driveway. Marcus, look. Chantel sobbed, running to him and burying her face in his chest. She destroyed my things. The lingerie you bought me in Milan. She bleached it all. Marcus looked at the pile of ruined silk on the floor. He looked at me, his nostrils flared. Is this true, Tasha? It was an accident, Marcus, I said, backing away slightly. I was just trying to help. Chantel asked me to wash them. I didn't know you couldn't use bleach on silk. I am a pharmacist, not a maid. Do not give me that innocence act, Marcus spat, pushing Chantel aside and stalking toward me. You are a doctor. You know exactly what chemicals do. You did this to spite me. You did this to upset the mother of my child. I am stressed, Marcus, I said, letting my voice rise. Living here with her, having her order me around, watching you play house while I sleep in the maid's room. It is too much. Maybe I wasn't thinking clearly. You are never thinking clearly, he shouted. You are a burden, Tasha. You have been a burden since the day I met you. I am trying to close the biggest deal of my life. I am trying to secure our future, and you are playing petty games with laundry. He was close now. Too close. I could smell the scotch on his breath. He had been drinking at lunch. Good. I stood my ground. I didn't cower this time. I looked him right in the eye. Our future, I asked. There is no our future, Marcus. There is your future. And her future. I am just the bankroll you are waiting to cash out. Do not pretend this is about me. You are just mad because your mistress lost her costumes. The silence in the room was deafening. Mama Pearl gasped. Chantel stopped crying and watched, eyes wide. Marcus's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. A vein bulged in his forehead. What did you say to me? I said. I stepped closer, invading his space, trusting the plan, trusting the security team monitoring the cameras Julian had installed. I said, you are pathetic. You are a bully, Marcus. You think you are a king, but you are just a man who needs 2 women to make him feel big, and you can't even handle that. He snapped. It happened fast. His hand lashed out a backhanded slap that caught me square across the cheek. The force of it knocked my head to the side. I stumbled back, crashing into the wall. A sharp pain exploded in my jaw. My ear rang. I tasted blood. I slid down the wall to the floor, sitting there in a daze. I touched my lip and my fingers came away red. Oh my God, Mama Pearl whispered, her hand over her mouth. Marcus. Marcus stood there breathing heavily, his hand still raised. He looked at his hand, then at me. For a second I saw a flash of fear in his eyes. He knew he had crossed a line. He knew physical assault changed the game. But then the arrogance returned. He lowered his hand and straightened his jacket. You made me do that, he said, his voice cold and shaking. You pushed me. You deserved it. Maybe that will teach you some respect. Chantel walked over to him and took his arm. "Come on, baby," she said, glaring at me with satisfaction. "Leave her. She is crazy. Let's go upstairs. I need to lie down. The baby is upset." Marcus nodded. "Clean this mess up, Tasha," he said, pointing at the ruined lingerie, "and stay in your room. If I see your face again tonight, I will finish what I started." He turned and walked toward the stairs, Chantel clinging to him like a vine. Mama Pearl looked at me, shook her head as if I were a naughty child, and followed them. I sat on the floor alone in the living room. My cheek throbbed, my lip bled, but I didn't cry. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small black device Julian had given me. It wasn't just a phone, it was a high-fidelity recorder linked directly to the cloud. I pressed the stop button. I looked at the red light fade to black. I wiped the blood from my lip with the back of my hand. I stood up. My legs were shaky, but I stood. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. My cheek was already swelling, turning an angry red. My lip was split. I looked at my reflection. I looked at the woman who had been beaten, who had been humiliated, who had been used. And then I smiled. It was a terrifying, bloody smile. "You just made a big mistake, Marcus," I whispered to the empty room. I pulled out the phone again and sent a text to Julian. "We got him." Protocol red. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed an ice pack from the freezer. I pressed it to my face. The pain was sharp, but the victory was sweeter. He had hit me. He had violated the morality rider. He had violated the domestic abuse clause. The waiting period was over. We didn't have to wait for the IPO. We didn't have to wait 5 months. We could end him now. But as I stood there icing my face, a new thought occurred to me. A thought as cold as the ice against my skin. Why end him now when I could let him climb all the way to the top of the mountain, just so the fall would kill him? The IPO was in 3 weeks. The investors were flying in. The stage was being set. If I triggered the clause now, he would lose everything in private. It would be a legal battle, a messy settlement. But if I waited until he was standing on that stage in front of the world. I looked at the stairs. I heard them moving around in the bedroom above me. I lowered the ice pack. I typed another message to Julian. "Hold fire. Let him have his party. I want a front row seat when he burns." I walked back to the maid's room. I lay down on the small bed. My face hurt, but my soul felt ironclad. 3 weeks, Marcus. 3 weeks. Enjoy your silk sheets while you can, because soon you won't even have a blanket to keep you warm. The house was quiet for the first time in weeks. Marcus had taken Mama Pearl to a cardiologist appointment, a performance of filial piety he hoped would play well for the cameras if anyone was watching. Chantel was at a spa day that she had charged to my emergency credit card, the one I hadn't canceled yet, because I needed her comfortable and distracted. I was alone with the silence and the secrets burying this estate. I stood in the doorway of Marcus's home office. He called it his command center. It was a shrine to his ego, lined with awards he had bought, and photos of him shaking hands with people who secretly despised him. He had forbidden me from entering this room since the night of the gala, claiming I would disturb his genius. But today, the cleaning staff had called in sick, and Mama Pearl had ordered me to dust, clean my son's workspace. Tasha, she had sneered over her morning coffee. "Maybe if you spent less time plotting and more time cleaning, you'd understand what hard work looks like." I walked to the massive mahogany desk. It was cluttered with IPO prospectuses, legal pads covered in his jagged handwriting, and empty tumblers of scotch. I wiped the dust from the surface, my movements mechanical. I was not a wife anymore. I was a ghost haunting my own life, waiting for the moment to materialize and scream. As I moved a stack of files, a glossy folder slid out and fell to the floor. It wasn't a business document. It was pastel pink, stamped with the logo of the most exclusive obstetrics clinic in Atlanta. Chantel's prenatal file. I froze. I knew I should pick it up and put it back. I knew invading medical privacy was a line a pharmacist shouldn't cross. But then I remembered the bleach. I remembered the slap. I remembered the $50 million waiting for me at the finish line. I picked up the folder and opened it. The first page was an ultrasound image, a grainy black and white smear that Marcus believed was his future king. I stared at it expecting to feel jealousy or grief. We had tried for a baby for so long. Seeing the proof of his success with another woman should have destroyed me, but instead my eyes drifted to the data printed in the corner of the scan. Patient Chantal Dubois. Gestational age 14 weeks 3 days. Estimated due date November 12th. My brain shifted gears. I wasn't Tasha, the scorned wife. I was Dr. Brooks, the clinical pharmacist who spotted drug interactions that doctors missed. I did the math. 14 weeks meant conception had occurred in early February. I frowned. February. I flipped to the next page. Lab results, routine blood work, iron levels, hormone panels, blood type, mother O positive. I turned the page. There was a note from the genetic screening. They had done a non-invasive prenatal test to determine the gender early. It was a boy. But the report also listed fetal blood markers. Fetal blood type prediction. B, positive. I stopped breathing. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Type B. Chantal was type O. Genetically a type O, mother has only O alleles to give. For a baby to be type B, the father must contribute a B allele. The father had to be type B or type AB. I knew Marcus's blood type better than I knew my own. I had filled out his medical forms for a decade. I had managed his prescriptions. I had sat by his bedside during his appendectomy. Marcus was type A negative. An O mother and an A father can only produce a type A or type O child. They cannot produce a type B child. It is biologically impossible. My hands started to shake, rattling the paper. I sat down in Marcus's leather chair, the leather creaking under my weight. I looked at the dates again. February. Where was Marcus in February? I closed my eyes, accessing the calendar I kept in my head. February was the month of the tech summit in Silicon Valley. He had been gone for 2 weeks. He had called me every night complaining about the food and the lack of sleep. But Chantal had been in Atlanta. She had been posting photos from her gym. Photos with her personal trainer, a man built like a Greek statue who appeared in her stories far too often. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, dark and hysterical. The baby wasn't his, but it wasn't just the blood type. There was something else. A secret even darker than infidelity. A medical truth that Marcus had buried so deep he had started to believe his own lies. I stood up and walked to the built-in bookshelf. I pulled down a thick medical binder hidden behind a row of fake leather encyclopedias. This was my archive. Marcus refused to digitize his personal health records, paranoid about hackers. He made me keep paper copies of everything. I flipped through the years: high blood pressure, cholesterol, the appendectomy, and then a file from 12 years ago, before we were married, before he was a CEO. Diagnosis: mumps orchitis. Complications: bilateral testicular atrophy. Semen analysis: severe oligospermia. Motility: 1%. I stared at the numbers. I remembered the day the doctor had explained it to us. We were engaged. Marcus had cried. He had felt like less of a man. The doctor had been gentle but firm. Natural conception will be statistically miraculous. It is nearly impossible. Marcus had made me swear never to tell a soul. He had forbidden me from bringing it up ever again. Over the years, his denial had calcified into a delusion. When we couldn't conceive, he blamed me. He blamed my stress, my age, my hips. He refused to get retested. He convinced himself he was a virile stallion, and I was the broken vessel. And now, here was Chantal pregnant. And Marcus, in his arrogance, believed it was his virility finally conquering nature. He believed his super sperm had overcome the odds because he was Marcus Brooks and he always won. He didn't know he was shooting blanks. He didn't know he was celebrating another man's child. I needed proof. Absolute, undeniable proof. The blood type discrepancy was strong, but a lawyer like Sterling would argue lab error. I needed DNA. I moved fast. I went to the master bathroom. I grabbed Marcus's hairbrush from the drawer. It was full of coarse black hair's roots attached. I sealed them in a Ziploc bag I had brought from the kitchen. Then I went to the guest bathroom, the one Chantel had claimed. Her toothbrush sat in a gold cup, pink and electric. I took it. I grabbed a used razor from the shower ledge for good measure. I bagged them separately. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My reflection was pale, my eyes bright with a dangerous energy. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a detective building a murder case, but the victim was already dead. He just didn't know it yet. I needed to get these to the lab. My old lab. The one where I used to be the director of clinical trials before Marcus made me quit to support him. I still had friends there. I still had favors to call in. I ran downstairs, the bags hidden in my waistband. I grabbed my keys. I had to be quick. If they came home and found me gone, there would be hell to pay. I drove to the clinic in Midtown, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I pulled into the rear entrance. A woman was waiting for me by the loading dock. Sarah, not the evil sister-in-law, but my best friend from grad school who ran the genetics department. "Tasha?" she asked, looking at my bruised face through the car window. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" "I fell." I lied, handing her the bags. "Sarah, I need a paternity exclusion test, and I need a fertility panel on the male sample. Rush it. Off the books. I'll pay double." She looked at the bags, then at me. She didn't ask questions. She knew Marcus. She knew what I had given up for him. "Give me 24 hours, she said. I drove back to the estate, my heart racing. I made it back just as Mama Pearl's car pulled into the driveway. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counters when they walked in. "Well," Mama Pearl huffed, dropping her purse on the table. "At least the kitchen looks decent. Did you finish the dusting?" "Yes, Mama Pearl," I said, keeping my head down to hide the triumph in my eyes. "Good," she said. "Marcus is in a mood. The doctor said his blood pressure is up. He needs to relax. Make him a steak tonight, rare." "Of course," I said. That night I served Marcus his steak. I watched him eat, cutting the meat with aggressive strokes, the blood pooling on the white china. Chantel sat next to him, cooing about the baby, rubbing her belly. "He's kicking," she said, grabbing Marcus's hand and placing it on her stomach. "Can you feel him, Daddy? He's strong, just like you." Marcus beamed, his face softening into a look of pure adoration. "I feel him. He's going to be a linebacker, or a CEO." I watched them sipping my water. It was a grotesque pantomime. A farce. The next afternoon, my burner phone buzzed. A secure email from Sarah. I locked myself in the maid's room and opened the attachment. Subject: Genetic Analysis Report. Sample: a male count, 0.5 million thousand ml. Diagnosis: severe azoospermia. Probability of natural conception: 0.0001%. Sample B. Female fetal DNA, traces paternity index 0. Conclusion: Sample A is excluded as the biological father of the fetus associated with Sample B. I stared at the screen. The numbers were stark, cold, and beautiful. Marcus was sterile. The baby wasn't his. The father could be anyone. The trainer, the pool boy, a random guy from a club. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Marcus was betting his entire empire, his IPO, his legacy on a lie. He was leveraging his company to build a future for a child that shared 0% of his DNA. I laughed. It started as a giggle and turned into a silent, shaking convulsion. He had called me barren. He had mocked me for not giving him an heir. He had humiliated me for my failure as a woman, and all this time he was the one shooting blanks. He was the broken one. I saved the report to the cloud. I sent a copy to Julian. "The king has no clothes," I typed, "and no heir." Julian's reply came instantly. "Keep it. This is the kill shot. We save this for the stage." I lay back on the bed, clutching the phone to my chest. The bruise on my cheek throbbed, but the pain felt distant now. I looked at the ceiling. "You wanted a son, Marcus?" I whispered into the darkness. "You wanted a legacy. Well, I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you a legacy of absolute, humiliating ruin." I heard Chantel laughing upstairs. She thought she had won the lottery. She thought she had trapped a billionaire. She didn't know she was just another unwitting player in my game. I closed my eyes and slept like a baby. The nightmare wasn't over, but for the first time, I wasn't the one running from the monster. I was the one holding the stake. The house hummed with a manic energy even though it was nearly midnight. Tomorrow was the day. The day Marcus Brooks would become a titan of industry. The day the ticker symbol MRCS would flash across the screens on Wall Street and turn my husband into a billionaire. He had been pacing the length of the living room for hours rehearsing his speech, barking orders into his phone, and drinking steady glasses of scotch to calm his nerves. I sat in the corner on a stiff chair, invisible as always, watching him preen. He looked like a man on top of the world. He had no idea he was standing on a trapdoor, and I was holding the lever. "Tasha, get in here!" His voice boomed from his home office, the command echoing off the marble floors. I stood up, smoothing the skirt of the drab gray dress I had worn for the last 3 days. I walked slowly to the study. Inside, the air smelled of leather polish and arrogance. Marcus stood behind his desk, the city lights of Atlanta framing him like a halo. Chantel was there, too, lounging on the sofa with her feet up, rubbing her swollen belly. She gave me a lazy, triumphant smile as I entered. "Close the door," Marcus said, not looking up from the document he was reviewing. I closed it. The click of the latch sounded final, like the closing of a coffin lid. Marcus finally looked at me. His eyes were bright with adrenaline and alcohol. He picked up a thick manila envelope from his desk and held it out. "Come get this." I walked forward and took the envelope. It was heavy. "Open it." I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out the stack of papers. The header at the top was bold and black. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." It was divorce papers. I scanned the pages. They were already signed. His signature was a sharp, aggressive scrawl at the bottom of the last page. "I had it drawn up this morning," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. "My lawyers have been working on it for weeks. It is a non-negotiable settlement offer." I looked at the terms. They were brutal. They were insulting. They were exactly what I expected. "You get the Honda Civic?" Marcus said, his voice dripping with generosity. "It has a few miles on it, but it runs, and I am giving you a one-time cash payment of $5,000. Consider it severance pay for your 10 years of service." $5,000. 10 years of my life, my career, my dignity, all valued at the price of a used car and a month of rent in a bad neighborhood. "And the house?" I asked, my voice quiet. "The house is mine," Marcus sneered. "The cars are mine. The stocks are mine. The company is mine. You get nothing, Tasha, because you contributed nothing. You were just a passenger." "And the ride is over," Chantel giggled from the sofa. "It is a good deal, Tasha," she chimed in. "You should take it. Marcus wanted to give you nothing, but I told him to be charitable. You need money for cat food, right?" Marcus laughed. "See, she is looking out for you." I looked at them. The king and his concubine. They were so sure of themselves, so sure that they held all the cards. They thought I was the same woman who had run out into the rain 5 months ago, crying and broken. They didn't see the shark swimming beneath the surface. "Tomorrow, after I ring the bell at the exchange," Marcus said, "you are going to sign those papers. You are going to sign them in front of my notary before we leave the hotel. Then you are going to take your bag and you are going to leave. I do not want to see you when I get back from the celebration dinner. I want you gone, Tasha. Erased." He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping inches from me. He smelled of expensive cologne and rot. "You played your part well these last few months," he said, lowering his voice. "You were quiet. You were obedient. You almost made me forget how much I despise you. But do not think for a second that I have forgotten who you are. You are a liability, and tomorrow I am cutting you loose." I looked down at the papers in my hands. I looked at the check for $5,000 clipped to the front. It was the ultimate insult, the final act of cruelty in a play that had lasted a decade. And for the first time in 5 months, I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't a nervous smile. It was the smile of an executioner watching a condemned man tighten the noose around his own neck. He had handed me divorce papers. He had handed me proof of his intent to discard me. He had handed me the final piece of evidence I needed to prove that his promises of a shared future were lies. But more than that, he had given me permission. Permission to destroy him without a single ounce of guilt. I looked up at him. I let the smile bloom on my face. It confused him. He took a step back, his brow furrowing. "Why are you smiling?" he asked. "Because, Marcus," I said, my voice steady and clear, "you are right. Tomorrow is going to be a day neither of us will ever forget." He narrowed his eyes, searching my face for a crack, for a sign of hysteria. He found nothing but calm. "Just sign the papers, Tasha," he growled, unsettled by my reaction. "And pack your things." "I will," I said. "I will pack everything that belongs to me." I turned and walked out of the study. I felt their eyes boring into my back. I heard Chantel ask him, "What is wrong with her?" And I heard Marcus reply, "She is just in shock. She knows it is over." "It is over," I whispered to myself as I climbed the stairs to the maid's room. But not for me. I entered the small, cold room that had been my prison cell for 5 months. I sat down on the narrow bed and placed the divorce papers next to me. I reached under the mattress and pulled out my real bag. It wasn't a suitcase of clothes. It was a black tactical backpack Julian had provided. Inside was everything I needed for tomorrow. The original signature page of the loan agreement proving I owned his company if he cheated. The USB drive with the recordings of his abuse and his financial fraud. The DNA report proving he was sterile and the baby wasn't his. And the check. The $50 million check that was now fully vested, fully mine. I took them out one by one, laying them on the bedspread like weapons in an armory. I picked up the burner phone. My hands were steady. My heart was slow and rhythmic. I was in the eye of the storm. I opened the encrypted messaging app. I typed 2 words. "Protocol read." I hit send. The message vanished from the screen, instantly deleted. A moment later, a single vibration buzzed in my hand. Received. "The cavalry is ready. See you at the Ritz." I put the phone down. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard. The rain had stopped, leaving the night air crisp and clear. The moon hung high and bright, illuminating the manicured lawn, the pool, the guest house. It was a beautiful estate. It was a symbol of everything Marcus had built, everything he had stolen. Tomorrow it would all be gone. I thought about the last 5 months, the humiliation of washing Chantel's clothes, the sting of Marcus's hand on my face, the way Mama Pearl had thrown away my food, the way Sarah had mocked my clothes. They had tried to strip me of my identity. They had tried to make me into a ghost, but they had forgotten one thing. Ghosts are terrifying because they have nothing left to lose. I went to the closet and pulled out the dress I had bought for tomorrow. It wasn't the beige cardigan or the gray slacks Marcus expected me to wear. It was hidden in the back, inside a garment bag from a dry cleaner. I unzipped the bag. The fabric shimmered in the moonlight. It was red, blood red, a power suit tailored to within an inch of its life. Sharp shoulders, a plunging neckline. It was a suit of armor designed for war. I ran my hand over the silk. Tomorrow, Tasha Brooks, the pharmacist, the doormat, the victim, would die. And in her place, the owner of the empire would rise. I heard Marcus come up the stairs. He paused outside my door. I held my breath. Was he coming in to taunt me one last time? Was he coming to make sure I was crying? He hesitated, then moved on down the hall to the master bedroom. I heard the door close. I heard him laughing with Chantel. Laugh, Marcus, I thought. Laugh while you can, because tomorrow you are going to choke on it. I lay down on the bed, fully clothed. I didn't sleep. I watched the moon move across the sky, counting down the hours. 24 hours. In 24 hours, I would be free. In 24 hours, he would be ruined. I closed my eyes and pictured the stage, the lights, the cameras, the moment when the world would see him for what he truly was, and the moment when he would look into the crowd and see me not as his wife, but as his judge, his jury, and his executioner. Bring on the morning, I whispered. I am ready. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom smelled of white orchids and unbridled greed. It was the scent of $100 million waiting to be claimed. The air conditioning was set to a brisk 68 degrees, but sweat still beaded on the foreheads of the bankers and analysts crowding the room. They were hungry. They were waiting for the bell. They were waiting for the birth of a unicorn. I stood next to Marcus near the stage entrance. I was wearing the blood-red suit. It fit me like a second skin, sharp and dangerous. I had paired it with 4-inch stilettos that could puncture a lung. I had painted my lips a matching shade of crimson. I did not look like the pharmacist wife anymore. I looked like a warning label. Marcus, however, was too drunk on his own hype to notice. He was adjusting his cufflinks for the 10th time, his eyes scanning the crowd with a manic intensity. He looked handsome, I had to admit. The bespoke tuxedo hid the softness around his middle. The stage lights caught the perfect shine of his expensive watch. He looked every inch the titan of industry he believed he was. You look intense, Tasha, he muttered, not looking at me. Try to soften it up a bit. You look like you are going to a funeral, not a celebration. Smile, wave, remember the script. I remembered the script perfectly. Stand by his side, look adoring. Nod when he talks about his humble beginnings, then disappear when the real party starts. I am smiling, Marcus, I said, showing him my teeth. Can't you tell I am overcome with emotion? He glanced at me briefly and frowned. Whatever, just do not trip. He turned away to shake hands with a senator who had just walked in. I scanned the room. Front row center sat the royal family of the Brooks dynasty. Mama Pearl was wearing a gold sequined dress that made her look like a disco ball. She was holding court, telling anyone who would listen that her parenting was the secret to Marcus's success. Sarah and Jamal were next to her. Sarah was wearing the dress I had seen her buy with Marcus's stolen money. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the room. She knew the eviction notice was real, but she was praying Marcus would fix it after the bell rang. And there, in the VIP section reserved for major shareholders, was Chantel. She was wearing a white gown that hugged her pregnancy bump, emphasizing it for the cameras. She looked like a fertility goddess carved out of marble and malice. She caught my eye and smirked, raising her glass of sparkling cider in a mock toast. She mouthed the words, "Tick-tock." She thought she was counting down to my expiration. She didn't know she was counting down to her own extinction. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. The giant LED screen behind the stage flickered to life, displaying the logo of Marcus's company, Medcore Innovations. A dramatic voiceover began to play, extolling the virtues of the company, its revolutionary technology, and its visionary leader. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer boomed, please welcome the man of the hour, the CEO of Medcore Innovations, Mr. Marcus Brooks. The applause was thunderous. Marcus squeezed my hand one last time, a grip that was painful and possessive, and then strode out onto the stage. He bathed in the applause, arms raised, soaking it in. He looked like a televangelist saving souls for cash. He stepped to the podium. He gripped the sides, his knuckles white. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with practiced emotion. Thank you all. Standing here tonight, I am humbled. He paused for effect. He was a good actor. I started this company in a garage with nothing but a laptop and a dream, he lied. I built it with sweat and sacrifice. But I did not build it alone. He gestured toward the VIP section. I had the support of a loving family. My mother, who taught me resilience. My brother, who stood by me. And of course, he hesitated. This was the part where he was supposed to thank me. The part the PR team had insisted on. My wife, Tasha. The spotlight swung to me. I stood in the wings, illuminated. I didn't wave. I didn't curtsy. I just stared at him. Marcus cleared his throat and looked back at the audience, quickly moving on. But tonight isn't about the past. It is about the future. It is about legacy. We are about to ring the bell that will change the face of medical technology forever. We are about to launch an IPO that will secure the future for generations to come. He was reaching the crescendo. The crowd was leaning in. Family, he shouted, his voice rising. Integrity, trust. These are the pillars of Medcore. We do not just build machines, we build promises. And I am a man who keeps his promises. I reached into my purse. My hand closed around the burner phone. My thumb hovered over the send button. Protocol red. I pressed it. The signal went out. Silent. Invisible. Deadly. On the stage, Marcus was raising his hand to press the ceremonial button that would trigger the confetti and the opening bell simulation. I dedicate this success to my children, he bellowed, looking directly at Chantel. To the next generation. And then the world stopped. A screech of audio feedback tore through the sound system, making everyone cover their ears. The giant LED screen behind Marcus glitched. The polished logo of Medcore fractured, pixelating into static. Marcus turned around confused. What is this? Tech support cut the feed. But they couldn't cut the feed. Julian owned the feed. The static cleared, and a new image filled the massive screen. It was not a stock chart. It was not a marketing video. It was a video from inside our home. The resolution was crystal clear. It was the living room. The date stamp was from 3 weeks ago. The audience gasped. On screen, Marcus was standing over me, his face twisted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. I was on the floor, clutching my cheek, my lip bleeding. The ruined lingerie lay scattered around us. You made me do that. The Marcus on the screen roared, his voice amplified to stadium levels. You pushed me. You deserved it. The real Marcus froze on stage, his face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. He looked at the screen, then at the audience, then at me. Cut it! He screamed, his voice cracking. Turn it off! But the video didn't stop. It cut to a new scene. The library. Marcus and Chantel. I have been hiding assets in offshore accounts she doesn't even know about. Marcus's voice boomed. Once the company goes public, I will kick that pharmacist back to the gutter. She won't get a dime. The crowd began to murmur. A low rumble of shock and scandal that grew louder by the second. She is just a stepping stone. The video Marcus continued, while the real Marcus stood paralyzed, watching his own digital ghost destroy him. I need her squeaky clean reputation for the investors. But once I cash out, she is dead weight. Chantel stood up in the front row, her hands covering her mouth. Mama Pearl looked like she was having a stroke. Sarah was trying to hide behind her husband. Then the video cut to black. A single word appeared on the screen in stark white letters. Default. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Then a slow, rhythmic clapping began from the back of the room. Clap, clap, clap. A man walked down the center aisle. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. It was Julian. He looked impeccable in a charcoal suit, his face impassive. He walked up the steps to the stage. He walked right up to the podium, where Marcus stood trembling. Marcus tried to speak. Who are you? Julian leaned into the microphone. His voice was calm, deep, and terrified every person in the room. I am the man who paid for your suit, Marcus. I am the man who paid for this party, and I am the man who is canceling it. He looked out at the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, the IPO is canceled. Medcore Innovations is insolvent. The bridge loan that financed this entire operation has just been called in. Pandemonium. People started shouting. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing blindly. Marcus grabbed Julian's arm. "You can't do this. We have a contract. The underwriters." "The underwriters are gone," Julian said, shaking him off. "They saw the video, Marcus. They saw the fraud. They saw the liability. But you are right. We do have a contract." Julian signaled to the wings. "My cue." I walked out onto the stage. The click of my heels echoed on the wood. The red suit blazed under the stage lights. Marcus looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with confusion and fear. "Tasha," he whispered. "What is going on?" I stopped next to Julian. I looked at the crowd. I saw the faces of the people who had judged me, who had ignored me. I looked at Marcus. "I told you, Marcus." I said, my voice amplified by the microphone, steady and cold. "I told you that you made a mistake." Julian's lawyer, Mr. Vance, stepped out from the shadows carrying a briefcase. He opened it and pulled out a single document. It was encased in a plastic sleeve. He handed it to Marcus. "Read it," Julian commanded. Paragraph 14. Marcus took the document. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. He squinted at it. This isn't what I signed. This isn't the guarantee." "Oh, but it is," I said. "Look at the bottom, Marcus. Look at the initials. Look at the ink blot on page 4. You remember, don't you? When I dropped my purse. When you told me to hurry up." He looked. He remembered. The color left his face completely. He looked like a corpse standing upright. What does it say?" he stammered. Mr. Vance stepped up to the microphone. "It says, Mr. Brooks, that by engaging in extramarital affairs and by committing acts of domestic violence against your spouse, you have violated the morality clause of the loan agreement." Vance paused, letting the words sink in. "It further states that in the event of such a default, the penalty is not financial restructuring. The penalty is total forfeiture." "Forfeiture," Marcus whispered. "Yes," Vance said. "Effective immediately ownership of all pledged collateral, including your personal real estate, your vehicles, and 100% of your controlling shares in Medcore Innovations transfers to the guarantor." The crowd went silent again, waiting for the name. Marcus looked at me. He looked at the document. He looked at the red suit. "To Tasha Brooks," Vance concluded. The room exploded. "No," Marcus screamed. "No. That is impossible. She tricked me. She swapped the papers. It is fraud." "It is your signature," Julian said calmly. "Notarized by your lawyer. In your office. You signed it, Marcus. You were so busy counting your money you didn't even read the fine print. You gave it all away." I stepped forward. I took the microphone from the stand. "I own it, Marcus," I said. "I own the company. I own the house. I own the cars. I own the desk you sit at and the chair you sleep in." I looked down at Chantel in the front row. She was sobbing, her makeup running, her dream of being a billionaire's wife dissolving into mascara tears. "And I own the debt," I continued. "Which means, Marcus, you are broke. You are worse than broke. You are nothing." Marcus lunged at me. "You butch, I will kill you." But he never reached me. Two of Julian's security guards materialized from the shadows, intercepting him before he could take 2 steps. They grabbed his arms, pinning him back. "Get off me," Marcus shouted, struggling. "I am the CEO. I am the king. You are trespasser," I said. I looked at the crowd. "The show is over, everyone. Please enjoy the refreshments. I paid for them." I turned my back on him. I turned my back on the man who had tormented me for 10 years. But we weren't done yet. The financial ruin was just the appetizer. The main course was still waiting in my purse, the DNA test. I heard Mama Pearl screaming from the floor. She was trying to climb onto the stage. "You can't do this, Tasha. That is my son's company. He has a child. He has an heir. You can't take the food out of my grandbaby's mouth." I stopped. I turned back around. I walked to the edge of the stage and looked down at her. "Your grandbaby?" I asked into the microphone. "Yes," she shrieked, pointing at Chantel. "His son." I smiled. "Oh, Mama Pearl," I said. "I think there is one more thing we need to discuss." I pulled the genetic report from my clutch. Chantel stopped crying. She looked up at me, terror in her eyes. She knew. She knew what I had found. Marcus stopped struggling. He looked at the paper in my hand. "What is that?" he rasped. "This," I said, holding it up for the cameras, "is a paternity test." The room went quiet one last time. And this time the silence was the sound of a guillotine blade falling. Mama Pearl scrambled up the stairs to the stage with a surprising amount of agility for a woman in a sequined gown and heels. She grabbed the microphone stand, her face contorted into a mask of righteous indignation. Behind her, Chantel followed, clutching her belly, like a shield, tears streaming down her face, ruining her camera-ready makeup. "You are a thief!" Tasha Mama Pearl shrieked into the mic, her voice booming across the stunned ballroom. "You stole my son's company. You stole his hard work. But you cannot steal his legacy. This child is a Brooks. He is the heir to this empire, and no piece of paper you tricked Marcus into signing can change biology." The crowd murmured. The mention of a child always garnered sympathy. Mama Pearl knew that. She was playing her last card, the grandmother card. Chantel sobbed loudly, leaning into the microphone. "She is just jealous because she is barren. She cannot give him a son, so she wants to destroy ours." "Marcus, tell them. Tell them about our baby." Marcus looked up from the floor where the security guard still held him. He looked at Chantel's stomach, and a flicker of hope returned to his eyes. It was the only thing he had left. The only piece of his ego that remained intact. "That is right," he spat, his voice gaining strength. "You can take the money, Tasha. You can take the bricks and mortar. But you will never have this. You will never be a mother. And this boy is going to grow up knowing exactly what you did to his father." I watched them. The three of them huddled together in their delusion. They looked like a Renaissance painting of greed and stupidity. I stepped closer to the microphone. The sound of my heels on the stage floor was like a gavel striking a block. "I am glad you brought that up, Mama Pearl," I said, my voice calm and amplified to every corner of the room. "Because there is a slight problem with your legacy." "What problem?" Mama Pearl snapped. "He is a Brooks. He has the Brooks nose. We saw it on the ultrasound." I opened the folder in my hand. I pulled out the first document. It was old, yellowed at the edges. "Marcus," I said, looking down at him. "Do you remember the summer of 2012? You were 24. You got very sick. You had a high fever. Swelling." Marcus frowned. The color drained from his face faster than it had when he lost the company. He remembered. Of course he remembered. It was the most painful week of his life. "You had the mumps," Marcus, I continued. "Adult mumps. And you suffered a very specific complication called orchitis." "Stop it," Marcus whispered. "Shut up." I turned to the audience. For those of you who are not medical professionals, orchitis is an inflammation that can cause severe damage to the reproductive system. In Marcus's case, it caused bilateral testicular atrophy. The room was so quiet, you could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. I pulled out the second document. This is a fertility analysis from Emory University Hospital, dated October 2012, I read. Diagnosis: azoospermia. Sperm count: 0. Motility: 0. I dropped the paper. It fluttered down to the stage landing next to Marcus's face. "Marcus Brooks has been sterile for 12 years. The gasp from the audience sucked the air out of the room. Mama Pearl looked at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She looked at Marcus. "Marcus," she wheezed. "Is that true?" Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. He was staring at the floor, his entire reality collapsing inward. He had known. Deep down, he had known. But his arrogance, his need to be the alpha male, had allowed him to believe a lie. He had allowed himself to believe that he was so potent, he had overcome biology. So I continued, turning to Chantel, who was now frozen in terror. If Marcus is sterile, who is the father of your baby, Chantel? Chantel backed away, shaking her head. No. That is a lie. You faked those records. Just like you faked the contract. It is Marcus's baby. I know it is. I pulled out the final document. The DNA test report Sarah had run for me. Science does not lie. Chantel, I said, I ran a paternity exclusion test using samples from Marcus's hairbrush and your toothbrush. The probability of paternity is 0%. I held up the report for the cameras. But I was curious. I wanted to know who the heir to the Brooks empire really was. So I ran a familial search against the database. I looked at the VIP section. Is Mr. Tyrone Jackson in the audience tonight? A man in the third row stood up. He was wearing a tight muscle shirt under a rented tuxedo jacket. He was Chantel's personal trainer, the one she posted workout videos with 3 times a week. Tyrone looked terrified. According to this report, I said, there is a 99.9% probability that Tyrone is the father. The room exploded. Laughter, shock, shouting. It was chaos. Chantel screamed. It was a primal sound of pure destruction. She lunged at me, her nails aiming for my face. You ruined my life, she shrieked. You jealous witch! Julian stepped in front of me. He didn't even raise his hand. He just looked at her. Chantel stopped. She looked at her husband, the man she had betrayed, the man whose money she had spent. Julian. She sobbed, reaching out to him. Julian, please. She tricked me. I didn't know. I thought it was Marcus. I love you, Julian. Please forgive me. Julian looked at her with the same expression one might look at a cockroach before stepping on it. You signed a prenuptial agreement, Chantel, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Clause 7. Infidelity results in the immediate termination of the marriage and forfeiture of all spousal support. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It was her wedding ring. He had taken it off her finger while she slept the night before. I filed the papers this morning, he said, dropping the ring onto the stage floor. You are divorced, Chantel. You have no home, you have no money, and you have a baby on the way with an unemployed personal trainer. I suggest you apply for WIC immediately. Chantel collapsed. She fell to the floor in her expensive white gown, weeping into the wood. And then there was Marcus. The security guards had let him go. He was kneeling on the stage, staring at nothing. He had lost his company. He had lost his fortune. He had lost his wife. And now he had lost his manhood. The illusion was gone. The great Marcus Brooks was nothing but a sterile, broke fraud. He started to make a sound, a high-pitched wheezing noise. He clutched his chest. His face turned a deep, alarming shade of red. My chest, he gasped. I can't breathe. Mama Pearl saw him. She screamed. My baby, you killed him. You killed my son. She tried to run to him, but her legs gave out. She fainted dead away, her sequins clattering against the stage as she hit the floor. People rushed forward. Someone shouted for a medic. I stood there in my red suit watching them. The paramedics arrived, pushing through the crowd. They swarmed over Marcus, hooking him up to monitors. I am a pharmacist. I know the signs of a heart attack. I also know the signs of a severe panic attack. Marcus wasn't dying. He was hyperventilating. He was terrified. For the first time in his life, he was facing consequences he couldn't buy his way out of. I walked over to him. I stood over him as the medics put an oxygen mask on his face. He looked up at me. His eyes were pleading. He grabbed the hem of my pants. Tasha. He wheezed through the mask. Help me. Please. I looked down at him. I remembered the night he told me I was nothing. I remembered the night he slapped me. I remembered the 10 years of emotional abuse. I leaned down close to his ear. I am not your wife anymore, Marcus, I whispered. And I am not your pharmacist. Call Tyrone. Maybe he can help you breathe. I pulled my leg away from his grip. I turned to Julian. Are we done here? Julian nodded, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. We are done. Security, get them out of here, Julian commanded. 4 large men lifted Marcus onto a stretcher. 2 others picked up Mama Pearl, who was groaning and fluttering her eyelids. Another 2 grabbed Chantel by the arms and dragged her sobbing off the stage. They paraded them through the center aisle, past the investors, past the reporters, past the people they had tried so hard to impress. The cameras flashed, blindingly capturing every moment of their humiliation. It was the walk of shame to end all walks of shame. The room was silent as they disappeared through the double doors. Then slowly someone started clapping again. It was Sarah. My sister-in-law was standing in the front row, clapping slowly, deliberately. Her face was pale, but her eyes were locked on mine. She knew. She knew she was next if she didn't get in line. The rest of the room joined in. The applause grew louder. They weren't clapping for Medcore. They were clapping for the show. They were clapping for the winner. And the winner was the woman in the red suit. I looked at Julian. He held out his hand. Shall we go, partner? He asked. I took his hand. Let's go, I said. I have a company to rename. We walked off the stage, leaving the wreckage of the Brooks dynasty behind us. The air in the ballroom felt lighter, cleaner. Outside, the night air was cool. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with oxygen that didn't smell of lies. I checked my phone. 1 notification. Bank of America. Wire transfer received. $50 million. I smiled. It was time to go shopping. But not for clothes. I was going to buy a bulldozer. And I was going to clear the lot. The headlines lasted for exactly 6 days. The rise and fall of Marcus Brooks. The Ponzi scheme IPO. The fake heir. The media devoured him with the same voracious appetite they had used to build him up. They picked his life apart bone by bone until there was nothing left but a skeleton of lies. I watched it all from the quiet sanctuary of a hotel suite in downtown Atlanta. I did not give interviews. I did not release statements. I let the silence speak for me. On the 7th day, the federal agents came for him. I was at the Medcore offices when it happened. I was there as the new owner, meeting with the shell-shocked staff, assuring them that their jobs were safe, even if their former CEO was not. I sat in Marcus's chair behind his massive mahogany desk. It felt different now. It did not feel like a throne, it felt like a workspace. I saw the flashing lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A caravan of black SUVs pulled up to the curb. Men in windbreakers with yellow letters swarmed the lobby. I pressed the intercom button. Let them in, I said to the terrified receptionist. And tell Mr. Brooks to come out of the bathroom. Marcus had been hiding in his private executive washroom for an hour, refusing to come out. He knew they were coming. His lawyers had abandoned him the moment the DNA test went viral. Even Sterling had issued a public statement distancing himself from the fraud. 2 agents kicked open the bathroom door. They dragged Marcus out. He was not wearing a suit today. He was wearing wrinkled slacks and a sweat-stained dress shirt. He looked small. He looked old. He saw me sitting at his desk. He stopped fighting the agents for a second. Tasha. He rasped, his voice a broken whisper. Help me. You own the company now. You can fix this. Just tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I miscalculated. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had threatened to destroy my career. The man who had called me nothing. I stood up. I walked around the desk. The agents held him back, but I signaled them to wait. I leaned in close. It wasn't a calculation error, Marcus, I said softly. It was fraud. You falsified the clinical trial data to inflate the valuation. You lied to the SEC. You lied to Julian. You lied to me. I did it for us. He pleaded, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat. I wanted to give you the world, Tasha. No, Marcus, I said. You wanted to give yourself the world. I was just the furniture. I nodded to the agents. Get him out of my building. They handcuffed him. The metal clicked shut with a sound of finality that echoed off the glass walls. They marched him through the bullpen past the hundreds of employees he had lied to. They put him in the back of a car and drove him away. He was facing 20 years for securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. He would be an old man when he got out. If he got out. I went back to the desk. I picked up the phone. Sarah is next, I said to the private investigator on the other end of the line. Execute the eviction. Sarah did not go quietly. When the sheriffs arrived at the boutique, she barricaded herself in the office, screaming that she knew people. She threw display cases. She ripped expensive silk scarves off the racks. But in the end, she was just a woman with no money and no power squatting in a building she didn't own. I didn't go to watch. I didn't need to see it. The report from the property manager was enough. Sarah had been escorted out in handcuffs for destruction of property and resisting arrest. She had filed for bankruptcy the next morning. Her assets were frozen. The Birkin bag, the one Marcus had bought with stolen funds, was seized as evidence. Her husband Jamal had left her the moment the money dried up, moving back in with a college friend. Sarah was living in a motel on the outskirts of town, working shifts at a diner to pay for a lawyer who wouldn't take her calls. She had sent me one text message, a long, rambling paragraph begging for forgiveness, begging for a loan, begging for a second chance. I blocked the number. I had no sister-in-law. And then there was Mama Pearl. The foreclosure on the Buckhead estate was swift and brutal. Since the house had been pledged as collateral for the loan, and the loan was in default, the property now belonged to the trust. My trust. I could have let her stay. I could have been the bigger person. I could have let her live out her days in the guest house surrounded by the luxury she craved. But then I remembered the way she had thrown away my food. I remembered how she had ordered me to scrub the floors. I remembered her standing on that stage screaming that I was a thief while her son tried to steal my life. I signed the eviction order. She had nowhere to go. Her friends in the church circle had turned their backs on her the moment the scandal broke. Her credit was ruined because Marcus had used her identity to open credit lines she didn't know about. Social services intervened. They found her a placement, a state-funded nursing facility 2 hours south of Atlanta. It was clean, it was safe, but it was not Buckhead. It was linoleum floors and shared rooms and bingo on Tuesdays. I sent a car to take her there. I did not go to say goodbye. I sent a box of her clothes and a Bible. I heard she tells the nurses that her son is a secret agent on a mission, and that her daughter-in-law is a witch who stole her castle. They smile and give her pudding. The slate was clean. The toxicity had been purged. I drove to the coast on Saturday morning. The drive was 4 hours of silence and sunshine. I rolled the windows down, letting the wind whip my hair. I breathed in the salt air as I crossed the causeway to Sea Island. Julian was waiting for me on a private stretch of beach. He was sitting in an Adirondack chair watching the waves roll in. He wore linen pants and a white shirt, the sleeves rolled up. He looked relaxed, younger than he had in the car that rainy night. He stood up as I approached. "Tasha," he said, offering his hand. "You look different." I shook his hand. It felt like shaking hands with a general after a war. "I feel different," I said. "Lighter." He nodded toward the ocean. "He is denied bail," Julian said. "Flight risk. He will be in county until the trial." "Good," I said. "And Chantel?" Julian asked. "I haven't heard from her," I said. "She is in Miami," Julian said, "looking for a new sponsor. She sent me a letter asking for alimony. My lawyers framed it and put it in the break room as a joke." We stood there for a moment watching the water. 2 survivors of a shipwreck standing on the shore. Julian reached into his pocket. He pulled out a plain white envelope. "A deal is a deal," he said, handing it to me. I took the envelope. I opened it. The check was blue. It had my name on it. Tasha Jenkins, not Brooks. I had legally changed it back yesterday. $50 million. It was a staggering amount of money. It was enough to never work again. It was enough to disappear. But I wasn't going to disappear. What will you do with it? Julian asked. Buy an island. I shook my head. No. I have plans. Tell me. I am going to open a chain of pharmacies, I said. But not regular pharmacies. Community wellness centers. In the neighborhoods that Big Pharma forgot. Sweet Auburn, Bankhead, West End. Free prescriptions for women without insurance. Prenatal care. Mental health counseling. Julian raised an eyebrow. You are going to give it away. I am going to invest it, I corrected. In people. In women like me who just need a chance. I am going to build a legacy, Julian. A real one. Not one built on lies and debt. He smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. Warm and impressed. And the company, he asked. Medcore. You own it now. It is tainted. The brand is toxic. I know, I said. That is why I am rebranding. To what? I looked out at the horizon where the sky met the sea. Jenkins Medical, I said. My father's name. The name Marcus tried to erase. I am going to turn his monument to greed into a beacon of hope. I am going to use his technology to save lives instead of just making money. Julian nodded slowly. That is a good plan, Tasha. A very good plan. He turned to leave. If you ever need an investor, he said, looking back over his shoulder, give me a call. I like your business model. I might take you up on that, I said. He walked away, his footprints disappearing in the wet sand. I stood there for a long time holding the check. I thought about the girl who had run out into the rain 5 months ago. She felt like a stranger now, a distant memory. I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a wife. I was a CEO. I was a philanthropist. I was a woman who had walked through fire and come out made of steel. I walked back to my car. It wasn't the Honda Civic Marcus had offered me. It was a white Range Rover bought with my own money, paid in full. I climbed into the driver's seat. I put the check in the glove compartment. I started the engine. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The beach was empty. The past was gone. I put the car in drive. I pulled onto the highway, heading back to Atlanta, heading back to my city, my company, my life. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me but ash. And ahead of me the road was wide open and the sun was just starting to rise. The most profound lesson from Tasha's journey is that when faced with ultimate betrayal, your greatest weapon is not immediate rage, but calculated strategy. Tasha demonstrates that being underestimated is actually a superpower. Instead of allowing herself to remain a victim of her husband's cruelty, she transmuted her pain into a cold, hard plan. Her story reminds us that true power comes from financial independence, emotional discipline, and the courage to walk away when your worth is no longer recognized. Sometimes you have to burn the old life down to build the empire you truly deserve. If you believe that success is the ultimate revenge, hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more satisfying stories of justice served.